Welcome to Part 4 in the LSE Student Academic Mentor, otherwise known as SAM, online training. This series of short online training videos will give you all the preparation you need to start mentoring successfully. Please watch these training videos carefully in order, as there will be follow-up questions for you to answer to ensure you have listened to the advice. In Part 1, you were introduced to the fundamental principles of mentoring itself and mentoring at LSE. In Part 2, we looked at your roles and responsibilities as a SAM and the commitments we expect you to make. In Part 3, we looked at signposting and well-being in relation to your mentees and to yourselves. In Part 4, we'll look at the skills and techniques you'll need to be a good mentor.
Here is an outline of what we'll look at in Part 4. We'll focus on the key skills you need to be a successful mentor, facilitating learning and talking and listening skills. And then we'll look at some top tips from past mentors.
Let's look at facilitating learning first. What exactly do we mean by facilitating learning? As mentors, as much as possible, you should be facilitating the learning of your mentees rather than telling them what to do, like a teacher might do. The goal is to help your mentees to find out answers for themselves, i.e. coach them towards the answers. Remember that your mentees may need your help and guidance more at some times of the year than others, especially at the start of term. As you help your mentees settle into LSE, they may, sometimes but not always, appear to engage with you less as the year continues. Do not feel bad about this. It is in fact a good sign that you are helping them to become independent. As it says here, while this seems like a contradiction of being a mentor, the ultimate goal of a mentor is for you to not be needed. As mentors, you do this by offering a friendly and supportive face around campus or virtually. You do not give away all the answers. You don't even need to necessarily have all the answers yourself, but you do know the right ways to help your mentees towards finding the answer themselves. Let's look at some of the key differences between teaching and facilitating. As a teacher, you're more likely to be in a position of power or authority. This is not something we want for a mentee-mentor relationship. Ideally, they should be a relationship between equals. As a teacher, you might do the following. Tell someone what they should focus on, decide which questions need to be prioritised and in what order, provide information on new knowledge and concepts, and you may provide recommended further reading. So as a facilitator, there are some key differences. The balance of power in the relationship is far more equal. You just happen to have more experience than they do. And so a good mentor allows the personal group to decide what they want to discuss and allows the personal group to decide which questions to tackle first. You could also discuss things on a more personal level, for example, by talking about which items on the reading list you found most helpful and why. As a mentor, you really want to feel you successfully empower the person or group to take control of their own learning, and this is done through your careful collaboration and support. As a mentor, you are also more than happy to relate back to your previous learning experiences, positive and negative. Don't be afraid, if you are comfortable of course, of sharing the bad stories, the times when you got things wrong, as well as the times when you got things right. So what does the previous table actually mean in practice? Well, as much as possible, your meetings should be led by your mentees and not by you. Let's turn now to breaking the ice. Looking at the feedback from last year, many mentees found being mentored rewarding, but sometimes challenging. Remember, your mentees may not always know what to say or have a specific problem to discuss. They may just be there to meet other people or find out more about what a SAM is before they decide to open up. Or in rare cases, but it does happen, they could just be meeting you because they think that they should. So make sure you break the ice with your mentees so they feel more comfortable opening up. Remember the basics. For example, introduce yourself, what you're studying, a little of your background. Tell them something, not too personal. For example, a little bit about your studying experience so far, why you volunteered to be a SAM, what you've liked best about LSE so far. And then 3, ask your mentee about themselves. For example, why did they choose to come to LSE? What were they doing before? What are they hoping to do after studying?
Don't worry. Last year, many mentees fed back that at first they weren't certain what their mentor could help with. Some knew they wanted to meet, but didn't know exactly what they wanted to talk about. So how does a mentor manage this?
By being prepared. So try to relate back to where you were at this time last year. What was concerning you? What were you worrying about? What were you working on? What were you reading? What were you doing? Essentially, you should always go to a meeting with a mentee with a backup topic of conversation and some advice. Even if they haven't asked for that particular thing, it can always be helpful and can help to stop those awkward silences that as a mentor may make you feel like you're not really helping.
Once your mentee feels more confident, you should encourage them to take the lead. This is an important part of being a facilitator rather than being a teacher. And this means help your mentee find their own way. Let them set the pace and don't rush ahead straight to the answer.
Remember, as a mentor, you're not there to teach, but to help facilitate. So let your mentee explore new ideas and come to their own answers. And gradually, you'll find your mentee begins to realise they've got this. They know how to answer that question or solve the problem they came to you with. Let's look now in detail at some more talking and listening skills.
So how do you make this happen? Well, starting with talking first, let's look at open and closed questions. What's the difference? Well, with a closed question, you're just able to answer with a simple yes or no. And why is this unhelpful? Well, it immediately closes off a two-way conversation by asking a question that requires a yes-no answer, especially to someone you are just getting to know or someone who may feel nervous about getting help, as most mentees often do. You may well find that they just answer yes or no and give you nothing else. Whereas an open question, such as one that uses the 5 W's and a H, opens up a conversation between you and the mentee, allowing you to explore with the mentee what's really going on. So as mentioned in the last slide, open questions are normally the 5 W's and a H: who, what, where, when, why, and how. And these open up a conversation between you and the mentee. They encourage your mentee to answer in the way that they see fit, with as much information as they feel comfortable disclosing. These questions allow the speaker to explore in more depth what it is that they want to talk about, rather than you leading the conversation. So let's look at some examples on the next slide. Open questions could include questions like, what are your classes like? What did you do during the holiday? How are you finding your lectures? Versus closed questions, which could be things like, do you like London? Was your day fun? Is your housemate nice? These are just some typical examples, but I think you can easily see the difference.
Keeping control of the conversation. Try not to answer questions straight away if you can. Obviously, there are exceptions. If they just want to know where a room is, then tell them, of course. But if they're stuck on a specific topic, or there's something they do not understand, as mentors, you want to help your mentee to gradually realise they do understand something better than they thought, or they can find the answer themselves. Don't be afraid of silences. Sometimes you might ask your mentee a question back, and they will look at you with a blank face and say nothing. Don't be afraid of this. Give them time to think about their answer. Allow the conversation to flow in another direction if it feels appropriate, but as the mentor, don't be afraid to take back control. If you feel the conversation has flowed too far away from what the mentee had originally wanted to discuss, then gently bring it back round to the original thing they came to you with. Okay, listening next. Remember the 80-20 rule when listening. In the ideal mentor-mentee conversation, for 80% of the time you should be listening. For 80% of the time your mentee should be talking. Now, this may not always be possible in the first conversations when you're getting to know each other, but after these, when you are more comfortable with each other, your mentee should be more comfortable talking more. Okay, lastly, let's look at some great advice we've had in feedback from past mentors.
Stay focused. When a mentee is talking, it's easy to start working out the advice you are going to give them instead of fully listening. Make sure you listen to everything they have to say before you give your advice.
Be aware of your mentee's emotions. Sometimes they might not say how they feel, but you can pick up on things by watching them during the conversation. Don't interrupt or preempt what they are going to say. Let them take their time. Always have a pen and paper to note down things they are saying. This helps you to remember conversations afterwards and assess what went well and what you might change. Before you start to give advice, remember to say back to your mentee what you think they want help with. This gives them a chance to clarify or even correct you. At the end of the conversation, take a few moments to recap what you talked about and check in with your mentee that they understand any suggestions or advice you've given them. This helps both you and them feel you've had a productive conversation.
So that's the end of part 4. Perhaps consider trying these skills out with another SAM in your department or on the SAM forum on our Moodle page. Another key skill is having good conversations, and we'll look at this in our final main part, part 5.